Welcome back to the DRM News Podcast. Today, we're going to be looking at New York Times games,
Oh, yeah.
specifically Connections
Yeah.
and Connections Sports Edition.
These have been really popular lately.
They have. I feel like I'm seeing them everywhere on social media.
I know, and they're really fun.
Yeah.
So for people who haven't played them before, what they are is basically you get 16 words, and you have to figure out...
16 seemingly random words?
Right. They seem random, but you have to figure out how they're connected.
You have to sort them into 4 groups of 4.
Exactly.
And the connection has to be the very specific one that the game makers had in mind.
Right. It can't just be like any connection. It has to be the one they were thinking of.
Right.
And another thing that makes them fun is the different difficulty levels.
No.
They're color-coded, so yellow is the easiest, and then it goes green, blue, and then purple.
Oh, yeah. Purple is tough.
Purple is definitely intimidating.
Yeah, it can be.
Yeah. So, do you go for the easy wins first to build momentum?
Ooh, that's a good question.
Or do you dive right into the purple and hope for like a breakthrough?
I think it depends on the day.
Yeah.
Sometimes I feel like doing the easy ones first.
Yeah.
And then other days, I'm like, I'm just going to go for the hardest one right away.
Right.
See if I can crack it.
Exactly. And it kind of makes you think about like what kind of problem solver you are.
That's true.
Yeah.
Have you used the Connections Companion?
Oh, yeah. The companion is great.
It's so helpful.
Yeah. It's like a lifeline for players.
Yeah, they have hints.
Hints, discussions. If you're really struggling, you can go there for emotional support.
Totally.
And there are actually 2 companions per day.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
Yeah, so they have one for like people who play in the morning and then another one for people who play later in the day.
Oh, that makes sense because of the time zones.
Right, exactly.
So they're really trying to create like a global community
Absolutely.
of puzzle enthusiasts.
Yeah, and they have this really cool thing in the companion called Need a Hint.
Oh, yeah. What is that?
So basically, it reveals words based on the category's difficulty level.
Interesting.
So like if you're really stuck on a purple category, you can get more hints for that one.
Oh, so you can choose your level of assistance?
Exactly.
Okay, that's pretty neat.
Yeah, it's like they gamified the hint system.
Yeah.
So you can still try to figure it out on your own, but you have that extra help if you need it.
So for today's Connections puzzle, the one for February 21st,
Oh, yeah.
I got to say the categories are pretty interesting.
They are really interesting.
So we've got way of solving a problem
Okay.
collected. Is from an orchard, Photoshop tools.
Mm-hmm.
And this last one is a real brain teaser.
Yeah, this one is tough.
Objects that may be right or left-handed.
I know, it really makes you stop and think.
Right.
Ah.
Like how often do you think about whether an object is right-handed or left-handed?
Yeah, it's such a weird thing to think about, but it's actually a really clever category. Yeah, it makes you look at everyday objects in a whole new way.
Totally.
So now let's talk about Connections Sports Edition.
Yes.
So this is basically the same idea as Connections,
Okay.
but all the words are related to sports.
Okay.
And it's a collaboration between the New York Times and The Athletic.
So they really went all out with this one.
Yeah, they did.
So for the February 20th Connections Sports Edition puzzle,
Okay.
the categories were, let's see, lawn games,
Okay.
parts of a racetrack,
Mm-hmm.
members of the Manning family,
Oh, yeah.
and athletes to guest host SNL.
That's a good one.
Right. So you'd need to be a fan of various sports to do well on that one.
Definitely you'd need to know your stuff.
Yeah.
But that's part of what makes these games so fun. Like they really challenge you to think about different areas of knowledge
Mm-hmm.
and to make connections that you might not have thought of before.
Totally. It's not just about memorizing facts.
Right.
It's about thinking creatively.
Yeah.
And seeing patterns.
Exactly. And it's amazing, how these games have become like a social phenomenon.
Oh, yeah.
Like people love sharing their results and, talking about how hard the puzzle was.
Right. It's like a daily ritual for some people.
Exactly.
See those little grid emojis everywhere?
Yeah, and it's always fun to see like how other people did and compare your score.
Yeah, like, did you get today's connections?
Exactly.
What was your score?
And it's interesting because you don't have to be like a word expert to enjoy these games.
Right. You don't need to have a huge vocabulary.
Exactly. Anyone can play them.
Yeah. And sometimes you just get lucky.
Yeah.
And you make the right connection without even knowing how you got there.
It's like your brain is working in the background.
Totally.
But going back to the Connections Companion for a second, there's another thing I wanted to mention.
Okay, what's that?
So besides the difficulty rating and the need a hint feature, the companion also has a place where players can discuss their strategies.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, you can see how different people approach the same puzzle.
So it's like a post-game analysis for your brain.
Exactly.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's really interesting to see like the different paths people take.
And the dead ends they run into.
Right.
So it's like you're not just playing against the puzzle, you're also engaging with this community of other players.
Exactly. It really adds another layer to the whole experience.
Yeah.
So now let's go back to the February 21st puzzle
Okay.
and those categories we were talking about.
Yeah. Way of solving a problem, collect, as from an orchard, Photoshop tools, and objects that may be right or left-handed.
Right. What do you think about those categories?
Well, the first three seem pretty straightforward.
Yeah, I agree.
Like I can already think of some words that would fit.
Right.
But that last one,
Yeah.
objects that may be right or left-handed,
Mm.
that's where things get tricky.
I know. It's like a whole different way of thinking.
It really makes you think about how many things are designed for right-handed people.
Exactly. It's like a subtle reminder of how design can reflect societal norms.
Really?
And, maybe even some biases.
It's crazy how a simple word game can make you think about these bigger issues.
I know. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
And speaking of those color-coded difficulty levels.
Oh, yeah, the yellow, green, blue, and purple.
Exactly. It's like they add this whole psychological element to the game.
Right, because you have to decide which category to tackle first.
Yeah. Do you go for the quick wins or do you dive into the deep end?
It's almost like a metaphor for life.
I know, right?
Like, do you play it safe or do you take risks?
Exactly.
But before we reveal the answers to the February 21st puzzle,
Okay.
I just wanted to take a moment to appreciate the people who make these games.
Yeah.
Like, they're so creative. It must be so hard to come up with new connections every day.
I know. And they're always so clever and surprising.
Right. Like, when you finally see the connection, it's like, oh, of course.
It makes so much sense.
But I never would have thought of it on my own. So, yeah, shout out to the game designers.
Definitely.
Okay. So, are you ready to reveal the answers?
I am. Let's do it. All right. So for a way of solving a problem, the answers were answer, fix, remedy, and solution.
Okay. Yeah, those are all pretty straightforward.
Yeah, they're kind of like the classic ways to solve a problem.
Right.
For collect, as from an orchard, we had gather, harvest, pick, and reap.
Okay, yeah, those are all verbs related to collecting things.
Exactly.
Especially from an orchard.
Right, like you harvest apples and you pick berries.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so for Photoshop tools, the answers were eraser, eyedropper, lasso, and magic wand.
Photoshop. I love Photoshop.
Me too. It's such a powerful tool.
Yeah, I use it all the time.
And then for the last category, objects that may be right or left-handed.
This is the one I was struggling with.
Yeah, this one was tough.
So what were the answers?
Okay, so the answers were baseball glove, can opener, golf club, and guitar.
Oh, wow, the can opener and the guitar.
I know, those are the ones that got me too.
I never would have thought of those.
Yeah, it's like you really have to think outside the box for this category.
Yeah, but once you see the answers, it makes sense.
Right, it's like, oh, of course.
Okay, so now let's move on to the Connection Sports Edition puzzle
All right.
for February 20th.
Mm-hmm.
So the categories were lawn games,
Yes.
parts of a racetrack, members of the Manning family, and athletes to guest host SNL.
Right.
A lot of sports knowledge required for this one.
Definitely.
So for lawn games, the answers were Botherly, Cornhole, Croquet, and Ken Jam.
Oh, yeah. Those are all fun outdoor games.
I've never heard of Con Jam.
Oh, it's really fun. You should check it out.
I will.
Okay, for parts of a racetrack, we have infield, pits, straightaway, and turn.
Those are pretty basic racing terms.
Yeah, even I know those, and I'm not a big racing fan.
Same here.
All right, so for members of the Manning family, the answers were Arch, Cooper, Eli, and Peyton.
The Manning's a true football dynasty.
I know, they're like royalty in the NFL.
Yeah.
And then for athletes to guest host SNL, we have Brady, Phelps, Rousey, and Watt.
Oh, yeah. I remember when Michael Phelps hosted SNL.
Me too. He was actually pretty funny.
Yeah, he was.
It's always interesting to see athletes in a different light.
Yeah, like outside of their sport.
Exactly.
Well, this has been a really fun deep dive into the world of New York Times games.
Yeah, I've really enjoyed it.
It's amazing how these games can connect so many different areas of knowledge.
I know. It's like they're a microcosm of the world.
Yeah, and they're just so fun and engaging.
Exactly. It's a great way to challenge yourself and learn new things.
And to connect with other people.
Absolutely.
So to all our listeners out there,
Yes.
if you haven't tried Connections or Connections Sports Edition yet, I highly recommend checking them out.
You won't regret it.
They're a great way to exercise your brain and have some fun at the same time.
And who knows, maybe you'll discover a hidden talent for wordplay.
That's right. So until next time, Keep those brains buzzing and those connections flowing.
And remember, the most important thing is to have fun.
Absolutely. Thanks for joining us.